Right then, here we go, my first ever blog post. I've done quite a lot on street photography on my YouTube channel, but I've never actually written anything. I'm the best at putting things to pen to paper, so I thought I'd do a video to accompany the vlog. So yeah, in this little video, what we're going to do is divide, it's basically a beginner's guide to street photography, and I'm just going to leave this video on the blog. I'm not going to put it on YouTube as such. So yeah, we're going to divide it, split it into sections. On this particular blog post, we'll talk about interesting, and I think this is fundamentally the most important part of your street photography. If you're new to street photography or you're trying to improve your street photography, basically the best advice I'd give you is to look and study other photographers' work, but look for what's interesting about the images. So sometimes a lot of people are drawn into the technical aspect of street photography more so than what's actually going on. And what if you eliminated that technical ability, which is, you know, there's a lot of talented photographers out there, what is actually interesting in the scene. And I think the ability to look and see what is interesting, what is the photographer's intention. So strip all the technical nonsense out of the equation and just look at the image at its bare bones and say, is it funny? Is it interesting? Is it unique? Is it weird? What is going on? Is it political? Is there something going on? Although political will be more documentary, but we'll ignore that one. So yeah, before we get into that, let me just introduce you to F8 magazine. If you haven't already, this is my street photography publication. I'm really proud of it actually. It's a phenomenal book. So it's got interviews and stuff in there as well. So it's got 2 interviews per book, per magazine, where this is issue 4, and loads of featured photographers from all over the world. So yeah, do check that out. It's got their backstories and some absolutely stunning images from all around the world with the stories behind there as well. So do check out F8 magazine. I'm particularly proud of it, and it's about 36 pages, I think. It's got some really cool, interesting images in there, and some amazing stories, some very insightful stories behind the images. And it's funny enough, putting that magazine together has made me realise sometimes what you don't appreciate when you're looking at an image. If you just look at an image and you don't know anything about it, sometimes you don't really appreciate it. So the magazine's definitely highlighted that for me. And also, as we're talking about interesting, it's a good F8 magazine is a good source to be able to look and break down and see what the photographer found interesting. And then obviously, if you look at the photograph and you think, well, let's have a look at a photograph in the magazine and think, well, okay, what's interesting about that photograph? Why did Robert take that photograph? So you can obviously look at it and think what you liked about it, and then if you read about the photographer's perception as well, you think, well, actually, I didn't think of that. That's quite interesting. So I can see why he took it, but I can see why I like it as well. So you can see it's subjective, isn't it? You can see how people see interesting differently. So yeah, what we'll talk about then is interesting. And with your street photography, if you've been shooting for a couple of years, or if you're new to it, if you break down what about each image, or about my images, or about any photographer that you follow on social media or whatever, and look about their images, get rid of all the technical ability and look at it as if to say, what is it that's interesting? What is it that's funny? What is it that's appealing? Do you have to be a photographer to appreciate this photograph? Is it something that, you know, I mean, Nan would look at it and go, oh, that's a good picture, or is it pretty? Is it telling a good story? Is it weird? Is it odd? Are the people in it quirky? Or what is it? Is it really interesting light? Is it the way you... I love my friend Mark Fernley's work. He shapes light very well. He's very good at controlling shadows and balancing his exposures and stuff like that, balancing his compositions with shadows. So when you look at an image, always try and break down what it is that you're drawn to, what's important in the image, and why is it interesting. So it doesn't matter what it is, a photograph of a landscape photograph, a sports photograph, it doesn't matter what it is, you should always be able to break down what that photographer was trying to portray when he took that photograph. So street photography, I'll put some examples up. Now, a very easy one, I mean, I love London, I love some of the big cities because you get some really interesting characters. So when you walk around the big cities and you see some really quirky people, it's very easy to sort of have your camera ready. I think fundamentally, get your camera ready is really important. If you've got your camera ready and you've got your settings ready and you're focused and everything like that, pre-focus, I always pre-focus, I always set my camera up so that it's focused where I want it to be. So I've got my settings right, I've got my shutter speed right, I've got my aperture right, I shoot fully manual. But then just to walk around, set yourself a challenge, walk around looking for interesting characters. Obviously it's difficult in the minute with the way the world is, but if you can, then you can take your camera out at any opportunity and you get to see interesting people. You know, those images, as long as they're an obvious section of the frame. You don't want them really, really small in the distance, so you've really got to zoom in and say, yeah, that person in the background was interesting, I liked him. You know, they have to be an obvious part of the frame. But an interesting person can often, or an interesting expression on a person, like the shocked person in that photograph, in that magazine, can often be enough to sort of justify the photograph. It makes that photograph have purpose. Okay, so just somebody walking down the street with their dog doesn't really warrant as a street photograph because it's got no interest to it. There's no point to it. It's something we see all the time. Likewise, light. I mean, my friend Mark is really, really good at looking for nice light and going to the specific location when that light's going to be good. So he'll know how to use that light and when to, what sort of person, what sort of silhouette, what sort of shape he'd want in that light, in that scene. So yeah, it's all about looking at what's important in the frame. Think, that light's interesting, how can I use it? That person's interesting. I need almost a portrait. I need some sort of expression from them or something like that. Unique is always something good to look for. If you see somebody walking down the street and, you know, day-to-day life, you could walk the same loop over and over again, you'll always see something different. But if you see something that's truly unique, like somebody does something funny, somebody's like, I don't know, lying down the floor, you're like, what on earth's he doing, sort of thing. Those sort of things are interesting because they're like, it's never going to happen again. It's truly spontaneous, it's truly rare. You've caught a random thing that's happened. And the person that's looking at the photograph is going to say, what on earth was he doing? There's a great photograph in one of the magazines, one of the F8 magazines, of a guy lying in the middle of the road as if he was swimming up one of the main roads in London, and it's between two buses. Right? You look at the photograph, you're like, it's not a technically important photograph, but you look at the photograph, you go, what is the guy doing? And it's just so interesting. So yeah, going on then from unique to funny, and that ties in with the last photograph. But I always look for funny images to put in this magazine. I always try and put images in there. I mean, like, there's two there, and the guy with the waterfall coming out of his head is quite humorous. And then on the next page, you've got a guy running, which I think it looks maybe America. I'm not sure where he said that. Oh, Greenwich. Oh, it's London. Oh, it's London. Oh, I didn't recognise it. But the guy running, he's sticking his middle finger up as the guy's taking his picture. So as he's running past, I mean, obviously the guy's not taking his picture. He just happens to be running through it. But I mean, that expression there, just things like that. I love this photograph for that expression. It's just so comedic. And as soon as I seen it, I thought that's got to go in the magazine. I really, really like the photograph. So yeah, it's not always about art. It's about, like, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. If you see something in a shot, I think that's funny, or it's interesting, or it's obviously it has to be candid, but it has to. I'm not sure about this storytelling malarkey, but it has to have something that so a non-photographer would look at the image and go, that's brilliant. Look at that guy. What is he doing? That looks fantastic. And it doesn't have to have the arty, fine art, perfectly exposed. It could be slightly blurry. That doesn't matter. It's just about getting something that's interesting and obvious. It doesn't. If you have to show somebody a picture and they go, right, what am I looking at? What is it about the photograph what did you take? What's a picture of? You know, it hasn't worked. Somebody has to look at that photograph and then first 3 seconds go, what on earth? You know, how weird is that? You know? So yeah, going on to weird. I was about to mention weird. You could set yourself a project, a long-term project, so that you're just walking around looking for things that are weird. You get weird people, you get weird buildings, you get weird signage, you get weird juxtapositions, so something that shouldn't be next to something else. You get, I don't know, there's all sorts of quirky things that you'll see on the street. Something sticking out of a bin, like an inflatable toy or something that shouldn't be there or something like that. You know, these sort of things that you're like, I'm having a snap of that. There might be no aesthetic or arty value to the shot at all, but you'll look at it and go, that's classic, that's really, really funny. Yeah, it's just if you can break it down into these sections, if you can sort of work out what, I mean, even if you just chose 4, like light, unique, funny and weird, if you just chose those 4 and just thought, well, I'm going to just look for these elements, and if it isn't in one of those elements, it doesn't work. Because the stronger your portfolio of images that have got something that not just you think is interesting, but everybody's going to think is interesting, you know, you might take far less photographs, because how often you can walk hours without seeing anything funny, without seeing anything interesting, especially now with the world being as quiet as it is, or the cities being as quiet as they are. But if you can't see something interesting, you can always take something interesting. I took this photograph, I'll put a picture up, in London the other day, and I like the reflection of what was going on, but luckily I managed to get a guy walking past and use his legs and frame the person in the back who coincidentally happened to have his legs in the same position. And I find the frame interesting. If the person in the foreground wasn't there and it was just the person in the background, it wouldn't be an interesting photograph. It would just be a reflection, a standard reflection. But that frame and that layering and the perspective and the, you know, makes it interesting. So just by adding that dimension to the image made that photograph interesting. I mean, element of luck there, obviously. But you can always, I mean, there's another photograph I put up when I shot through a sign which was cut out, shape of an arrow. I'll put that up. And otherwise, it was just a picture of a woman walking on the street. There was nothing interesting there at all. But because she was walking the direction of the arrow and I managed to get her in the position of the arrow, it is interesting. It's like the arrow points to the direction she's walking and it gives a frame. So reflections, you can create interesting with a reflection. If you see somebody, you think, well, I like that person. I like the way they're dressed, they look quirky and the light's good. I can't just take a picture of them on the street. That's boring. I need to, oh look, here's a car. Let's wait for them to walk past that car and reflect on the bonnet of the car. Or let's wait for them to go past a reflective surface or whatever it is. Or again, make a frame, shoot through a bin, whatever it is, shoot through something, make a frame. But yeah, you can do it if you put your mind to it. But the easiest thing to do is to look at other people's work. And if you see something that's funny, that's interesting, that's abstract can be interesting. Like at night, there's some fantastic photographers shooting at night, get some really, really quirky shots at night. So you can do it. I've mentioned reflections. Movement. You can set yourself a challenge of just doing ½ second exposures and just pan, or 1 second exposures and pan the camera and get some really nice intentional movement, blurry panning shots as bikes go past. They can be interesting, but at the same time they can be sort of monotonous and overdone. So, but if you can position the camera right, if you can position the subject right, if you can get the right balance of sort of art and the nice linear aspect that you get when you pan the camera, that can be interesting. So yeah, set yourself challenges, look for things that you think are interesting, but it's very, very important that the interest in you're trying to shoot is kind of a more generic interest in, as opposed to you might have a specific interest in a type of dog or breed of dog or whatever like that, and you're going around photographing that specific breed of dog. Wouldn't necessarily be interesting to most people unless they very flukily shared your interest of dogs. But yeah, do think, try and I'll put a list up so you can sort of break it down, and then yeah, do try and look for, the easiest thing to do is buy books, look online, look at online magazines, look at interviews, look at famous photographers, try and work out what was interesting. Scrutinise it, obviously keep your opinion to yourself, but scrutinise it, and also try and work out whether the camera settings, because you might be a beginner in photography, you might not have even a clue what aperture is or shutter speed or as ISO is. If you look at these photographs and you think, well, that's a really, really cool shot, I like that. Is it too dark? Yes or no? Is it blurry? Yes or no? Is it got lots of depth of field? Is that part of what you like about it? Is it technically right? Do you think, even as someone who doesn't know how to use a camera, they can look at a photo and go, it's a bit dark, or it's a bit bright, or I don't like that, or it's a bit, you know, shame it's blurry, but I love the picture. So try and work out what it is you like and what you don't like. And then obviously what you'll find is a lot of the time with street photography, it differs from most other genres of photography in that the technical aspect of the photography of the image isn't that important. So yeah, I will leave it there. I only want to do a very short video, but I hope you enjoy reading this blog, and yeah, I hope you get something from it. Do check out F8 magazine. You can subscribe now and get a bit of a discount on there as well. So yeah, I hope you find the blog interesting, and I'm going to try and get on and do the next one straight away. Otherwise, it will never get done. Anyway, thanks for watching, and yeah, check out my YouTube channel if you would like to see some of my street photography videos, some of the how I approach shooting some street photography and settings and tips and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.